Now, speaking of multi-dimensions, synesthesia.
Yeah.
Can you... I'm fascinated by this. There was an album years and years ago by a guy named Peter Himmelman called Synesthesia. And he wrote an entire record based on these, enhanced perceptions of things. And ever since that, I've been fascinated by it. Mozart apparently had
Really?
bits of synesthesia.
Yeah.
What is yours?
Well, it's not like, I see you now and there are colours floating around. It's more psychologically when I'm playing music, it fits together in colours, and like each song is a world that's made up of textures and colours. It's quite hard to express, but it's also with kind of days of the week and numbers. I just see them in colours, and I didn't think it was anything out of the ordinary until I asked my sister, and I was like, oh, do you see blah blah blah, and she was like, no, no, absolutely not. And then I found out it's common in creative people, and it doesn't really surprise me because I feel very linked, like very connected with colour in everything.
Well, look at you.
Yeah.
How does it affect your music?
I think in a good way. I'm not sure if it affects it. I think it's just how
I think it enhances
compose. Yeah, and also lyrically it does affect it. You're right, because I want to put a really vivid image in people's minds when they're listening to a song. So it's like when you're writing, the meaning has to be good, but it has to sound good as well. If you know what I mean, you can't just say something. You have to say it in a certain way that locks.
I think your record's tremendous because I come from like a new wave, old school new wave background, and I hear lots of that. Have you ever listened to any records by Lena Lovitch?
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
Because I love
And it's so embarrassing because even now I've never ever listened to a record of hers.
Oh, we have to hook you up with some Lena Lovitch records because she's that same sort of floating on the melody, going off in a different chord change when everybody expects you to go here. and that's what you do, and especially when on the melody lines, what you do. And I think I love being surprised by melody because let's face it, there are 12 keys in a keyboard. There's only so many ways that you can put them together in a pleasing way.
Yeah.
And over 60 years of rock and roll, how many times have those same patterns been discovered?
It's so fascinating, isn't it?
So when you hear somebody like you, who instead of going from G, E minor, you'll just G something else.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wow, that's really cool.
Do you know why that is though?
No.
'Cause I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing.
But that's
I'm just doing what sounds good to me because I say I taught myself the keyboard, but I still don't know the chord names or anything. It's a composition tool for me.
That's the brilliance about pop music and rock music is because
you don't have to be trained. I agree. I prefer innate musicality over taught, musicianship, I suppose.
Yeah. Because if you don't know, you're making mistakes.
You have no boundaries or rules.
And you make wonderful discoveries.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes these little nuances make giant differences.
Mm.
So that's really 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 cool to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you well in what you're doing because I think you're a lot of fun. I want to see what happens. I know it's too early to ask about a second record.
Oh no, it isn't.
It isn't?
No, I'm doing it.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like, songwriting wise, structurally it's the same, but everything else is kind of, I don't know, it's gone in, some of it is really like quite goth poppy, and then others is like 70s folk, so I have no idea what it's going to be like, but my voice has changed so dramatically that now when I listen to the old record I'm like, oh my god, I can't listen to this because it's much more restrained now because of touring, and it's much smoother, more operatic. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Well, I think there's BBC speaks highly of you.
Yeah.
So I hope you do well, and we'll hook you up with some Lena Lovitch records and.
Please. Do you think it's going to do me bad?
No, I think you'll do fine because she was Yugoslavian.
Yeah.
And she was much more. I don't know what's the word. You'll have to hear it to understand.
Okay.
And if you ever manage to track down a soundtrack to a movie called Cha-Cha, which had Herman Brood in it and Nina Hagen and a few others, that's another one that you should. I've never seen it on CD. If anybody knows where you can get a copy of Cha-Cha with Herman Brood and Lena Lovitch and Nina.
Cha-Cha, I like the name.
Yeah, it's just some weird junky movie that was made, but with a great soundtrack. One last question: what is it about here in North America? We maybe it's because we've grown up here and we see everything the way it is. Everything seems to be fairly formulaic, but with the UK, every once in a while, somebody like you or Florence or Pete Doherty or somebody will show up that is just so completely left wing, like so completely out there. What is it about the British music culture that allows for people like you to flourish?
Well, I think the media is very different. Whereas I don't know about Canada, but in other states, like for example California, the radio there, what goes on radio is so limited. Say, is it Kiss in LA? They have 7 records that they cycle every day, and it doesn't give any room for anything other than this auto-tune kind of club bangers. And music is so much more than that. So I'm really not sure. I guess you're referring to what's actually the musicians that are actually created, right?
Well, the way they're created, the way they're followed, the way they're consumed. I mean, you have Radio 1, Radio 2, Six Music, you have The NME, you have any number of glossy magazines that come out every month. I mean,
no, it's funny, isn't it? That is a very interesting question. I mean, I think with my experience in America, I think North America, I think the A&Ring process is very different. And the way that the talent is cultivated is different because you're immediately put in a room with songwriters. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, I write my own songs. I don't need to co-write with people to write an album. That's one thing. And it seems like the idea of, a very pure idea of an artist doesn't exist here, I feel. Like, for example, if you name the top person in the world at the moment, which is Gaga, who I adore, I think there were a lot of co-writes on her first album. And if she is kind of the purest, biggest artist at the moment, it kind of just goes to show that are there any people out there who genuinely do it 100% themselves and can still be massive? I think the idea of that is kind of lost.
the other thing, I think, is because Britain is so compact.
Yeah.
It's like
True.
a pressure cooker where a lot of people and a lot of ideas and a lot of sounds are in a really tiny space competing for a limited number of ears and a limited amount of attention. But you have, a number of national radio networks. You have the, the legacy of Top of the Pops and Jules Holland and, everything, all the music stuff that all the music, radio or music-based TV shows. Plus,
well, I guess you can get support a lot more easily because things spread more quickly.
Yeah.
So, say here, if there's a really great singer-songwriter and loads of people in Toronto love him or her, that's great. But, how do you get the rest of
the country.
Yeah, exactly. It's because it's just so massive.
Right, because the next major city from here is a 6-hour drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you can go from Islington to Soho, and you've got a completely different audience. It's just we just find it fascinating, and this is why I'm such a big fan of British music, because you could never get bored.
It's brilliant. I'm just thinking of the Beatles.
Well, and then there's the
Rolling
legacy.
Stones.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Beatles, Zeppelin,
It's
Rolling
crazy.
Stones.
But then you guys have, Johnny Cash, and that's all you need.
Well, thanks very much. I hope
Thank
you have a good
you.
show tonight, and
Pleasure.
happy hunting.
Yeah.
With clothes.
Yeah, happy hunting.